come to you today humbly to present the single best picks that you can make in every round of your fantasy football draft. And I shouldn't say single. I have a couple options for each round. Some of them will be just one player. Some of them will be up to 3 or 4 players, all right? And this is based on industry consensus ADP, or average draft position. So it is the average of ESPN, Yahoo, CBS, NFL.com, Underdog, FFPC, so high stakes leagues. I'm taking the ADP average of all of them so we can get a real look at where the big girls are going. We'll start fresh and hot off the press with round 1, and I really just don't think you can go wrong here. You're not going to dislike any of the picks here. However, tomorrow's video, I'm going round by round with the worst picks that you can make in every round, so make sure you're subscribed for that. I mean, listen, Tyreek is my top player on the board, and he usually falls to 3 or 4, so I love him. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I love either of the young, explosive bell cow running backs in Bijan and Breece Hall. Huge fan of Garrett Wilson or A.J. Brown at the end of the first round. So again, I don't really think you can go wrong here. The further back in the round we end up getting, the more I like the receivers, the more I like the safety of who you're getting there. So we'll just kind of continue to round 2, and I have 4 players listed here as my favorite picks in this round. We got 2 wide receivers and we've got 2 running backs. First one's might be a little bit cheap, but it's Puka, okay? And Puka has fallen deep into the second round, or the middle of the second round, I should say, because of this bursa sac in his knee. This is not an injury that we are concerned about. He should be healthy probably by the time you watch this video, and he'll be back at practice by next week, the latest. So I'm not worried about Puka. If he falls into the middle of the second round, he becomes my favorite pick. He just destroyed every rookie record in LA last year. He was the Rams' #1 receiver, and we can hope and pry that Cooper Kupp is back to his Triple Crown self, but I like both of these guys, man. This offensive system, no matter what you think about Puka as a player, you might think he's overrated as a player. Does he belong in the Tyreek, Justin Jefferson conversation? No, he's not that good of a route runner, but it doesn't really matter when you are put into a scheme like you are with Sean McVay, and you become the #1 weapon in there. So love the floor of Puka, love the ceiling of Puka as well. Right behind him, we have another young wide receiver, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. He is surrounded by players like Drake London's and Chris Olave's in ADP, and I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. over them 9 times out of 4. I don't know why I chose those numbers, but to show you the fractional difference of how I'm taking them, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. here, okay? Marvin Harrison Jr. is coming into a situation in Arizona where they have the 6th most wide receiver targets available coming into the year. He was the 4th player picked off the board, and he's coming in immediately as the wide receiver 1 in Arizona. Kyler is 2 years removed from his ACL tear. This is a generational prospect, as is honestly all the receivers in this fucking class are incredible, but MHJ is the most incredible, okay? And he's tied to a really good quarterback in what should be a pretty good offensive system. So out of the gate, I expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to see 140, 150 targets immediately. So love him in this round. And the 2 running backs I really like in the second round are both Kyren Williams and Isaiah Pacheco. You'll see a theme of this video, and it is the Rams. I think their offensive line is really good. It is not a fluke. They are one of the top 3 or 4 run blocking offensive lines and just overall blocking offensive lines in the NFL here. They're dealing with some injuries, so they might get off to a little bit of a slow start on the line, but I'm not overly concerned about it over the course of the season. The Rams did draft Blake Corum, but listen, he's going to be someone that takes carries from Kyren when Kyren Williams is tired. And we saw a handful of games. He had 4 games last year in which he played fewer than 80% of the snaps, and he dominated in those. He was a goal line monster. He was scoring touchdowns. He was catching passes. Love Kyren, right? When McVay likes a running back, when McVay trusts a running back, he trusts a running back. And the way he talks about Kyren, man, I wish someone loved me the way that Sean McVay loves Kyren Williams, and you should love Kyren Williams. Isaiah Pacheco is the next running back in this round. So you've got 4 players in this round. You've got Puka, Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyren Williams, Isaiah Pacheco. Someone for everyone. If you like running backs, if you like wide receivers, if you're in the early part of the second round, if you're in the late part of the second round, I wanted to be nice and generous with my opinions to everybody. Isaiah Pacheco, I've yapped about him a lot this offseason, but he has been one of my favorite players from January all through this moment, late August, when our drafts are a week away. Isaiah Pacheco is taking over the bell cow role. Jerick McKinnon is out of there. In games where Jerick McKinnon did not play last year, Isaiah Pacheco was averaging over 21 PPR fantasy points per game. He was getting the goal line work. He was getting the pass catching work. He was getting the 3rd down and long work, the 2 and 4 minute drill work. And guess what? Through 2 preseason games so far, we have seen Pacheco play nearly every single snap with the starting team on the field. on third and long, in red zone, on the goal line. Like, it is all Pacheco. He is primed to have a bell cow role in the league's best offense. So continuing down in round 3, we've got 2 wide receivers. We've got Nico Collins and Cooper Kupp. Everything I said about Puka Nacua, I also like for Cooper Kupp. I just like the system. And apparently Cooper Kupp has looked great. He's had no setbacks. He's had no injuries this summer. So he will come into the year fully healthy. I would take Puka over Kupp. I know people are going to ask. I have Puka ranked higher than Cooper Kupp in my fantasy rankings, which are available in our draft guide right now on bdge.co, fully updated and live throughout the rest of the summer. I have Puka over Cooper Kupp, and I would make that pick every single time, but I like Cooper Kupp as well. Do I think he's lost a bit of a step after these injuries and missing a bunch of time? Yeah, I think it's possible because he's up there in age, but I think both of these guys are going to consume, 55 to 60% of the team's overall targets, and both be great for fantasy as long as they can stay healthy. Love Stafford, ripping it. Stafford has been as good as he's been at any point in his career right now. He had the single highest PFF passing grade of his career this previous year, and 4 of his 5 highest of his career have been over the past 5 years. So he is aging like wine. Matt Stafford is getting better as he is getting older. System, offensive line, the weapons, love everything about the Rams offense this year. With Nico, I just think he's the true alpha there. I think he's the true wide receiver 1 attached to an up-and-coming superstar at quarterback. So you'll see a theme of the players that I continue to put on this list. It is draft players surrounded by good quarterbacks, draft players in high-scoring offenses, just draft players in good offenses, all right? The lower down you get in the rounds, the more risky we can get and the more talented, high upside players, maybe in bad situations. But you don't want to be using your early round picks on guys that are on really bad teams, on teams that don't have a lot of scoring opportunities, on teams that don't have a lot of time of possession, on teams that aren't moving the ball, on teams that aren't throwing the ball and scoring a lot, okay? You want to attach your guys like Nico Collins in this Houston offense with CJ Stroud coming off a massive breakout year, got a fat extension this offseason, is a phenomenal route runner, is big, is fast, is everything, okay? Don't really care that Stephon Diggs was added. I think he has lost a little bit of a step. Nico Collins last year did what he did despite only playing on about 60% of the snaps. So far through 2 preseason games, he has been on the field for 87% of the offensive snaps. If we see that type of snap adjustment going up, his numbers will look extremely similar to last year's, if not better. And the third player I have in this round is Jalen Hurts. He is my quarterback 1 this year for fantasy, all right? I love Kellen Moore coming in. I think they're going to be more fast-paced offense. The tush-push is not going anywhere in Philadelphia. He has scored double-digit rushing touchdowns in 3 straight seasons, coming off of a 15 rushing touchdown season, and I would say he has the best supporting cast that he's ever had. You throw Saquon Barkley into the mix as a pass catcher out of the backfield. I don't know that they're going to do that often, but just having a safety valve like that is a beautiful thing, all right? So Jalen Hurts, people got hurt on him last year, but I'm down to double down, all right? Because he is just a phenomenal fantasy player at the end of it, and he is someone that will anchor the top of your team. Moving on to round 4, we have 2 players and then 1 player with a caveat. DJ Moore is player number 1. Trey McBride is player number 2. DJ Moore, I am fully Caleb Williams pilled. I am all in on the Chicago quarterback. He has looked phenomenal this preseason. I think Keenan Allen is going to take a step back. I think Rome is a rookie, which leaves DJ Moore coming off a massive breakout year as a wide receiver 1. He has played every single snap as a wide receiver 1 so far this preseason as well. He will be lining up when there's 1 wide receiver on the field, in 12 personnel when there's 2 wide receivers on the field. And I think at this point, he's probably just the best receiver that they have in that tandem. And I want players attached to Caleb Williams. So DJ Moore in the 4th round, especially if you're in a PPR league, I think he's going to be the guy that Caleb relies on third downs when he needs a secure catch near the red zone, all of it. Love DJ Moore this year. And then Trey McBride. I have announced my love for him throughout the offseason over and over and over and over again. MHA coming in, of course, makes his target share go down a little bit. But the chemistry that him and Kyler built over the second half of last year was unrivaled by quite literally any tight end in the league. He had a 31% target share from when he took over as a starter in Week 8 when Zach Ertz got hurt to the end of the season. There wasn't a single tight end that had a higher target share. He was scoring fantasy points left and right. Like, nobody was looking at their tight end like Kyler was looking at Trey McBride last year. Over that second half of the season, he averaged 14.8 PPR fantasy points per game. And for context, Travis Kelce was the tight end 1 last year in PPR points per game, averaging 14.5. So McBride, who does not go off as one of the top 2 tight ends in fantasy drafts right now, is an easy pick in the 4th round for me. And the third player that I'm putting in here, despite if you look at industry consensus ADP, is Rashee Rice. He is going at the 6'11". I would advise you to start looking at Rashee Rice, depending on your league, knowing your league, read the room a little bit, have some self-awareness. If you think you need to draft Rashee Rice with a 4th-round pick, I am completely fine with it. I moved Rashee Rice all the way up to, I believe, wide receiver 18 in my rankings this morning, and I feel phenomenal about it. After seeing what they did in the preseason, after hearing everything I've heard about the legal situation, I don't think he's getting suspended. I think you're getting a full year with Rashee Rice. After a breakout rookie year, he also took over as the top pass catcher in this offense once he got onto the field and once he became a full-time player. He had more targets and yards and receptions and touchdowns and red zone targets and end zone targets than Travis Kelce did over the second half of last year. With Hollywood Brown there and with Xavier Worthy there, they're going to stretch the field. Like, safeties are going to have to play back, leaving the entire middle of the field open for guys like Rashee Rice. He's going to be a PPR fiend this year. So round 4, round 5, round 6, anywhere you can get Rashee Rice, he is my favorite player in that round. Moving to round 5, we have Kenneth Walker, who is going early round 5, but I think he's kind of been left out of that like group of running backs where he's kind of like in between. Like, okay, maybe he's in the Rashad White space, maybe he's in the David Montgomery space. Not quite good enough to get up to where like James Cook and Josh Jacobs are, but I'd argue that he should be up there. I'd argue that he's getting drafted later, but he's the best value in that spot where you can get those other guys around earlier. Kenneth Walker, I think, is primed to take over as a 3-down bell cow this year in Seattle. The regime that took Zach Charbonnet in the 2nd round is gone. That was a crazy pick, and it has clearly shown that Zach Charbonnet is not a 2nd-round talent at the NFL level. If Kenneth Walker can stay healthy for a year, he's explosive. He is one of the better backs in all of football when he is healthy. If you look at these numbers, he is like top 5 in yards per carry, in breakaway run rate, in juke rate, and elusiveness whenever he is on the field, okay? The way they're talking about him at camp is if they're going to use him on all 3 downs, as if they're going to use him more in the passing game. It wasn't really something we saw in college, but in the limited sample that we've seen in the NFL, he's been very good at it. So I love Kenneth Walker here. And then I also put Kincaid on this list because one of my general strategies for this year is that I want to leave my draft with one of the big 5 tight ends. And you know what? I could probably throw Kittle in here at the end of the 5th, early 6th round, but Laporta, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid. If I can't get Trey McBride, then I will take whichever of those 5 tight ends ends up falling the furthest, and that is usually Dalton Kincaid. So I put him in the 5th round where I'm like, okay, I had my first 4 round picks, and then Kincaid falls to me at the 505 or the 507 or the 509. I'm ecstatic leaving the round with Dalton Kincaid. 2 receivers I really like at the end of this round. Again, Rashee Rice will be the guy here, but George Pickens and T. Higgins. George Pickens is his 23-year-old coming off of 2 really, really good seasons. This is where I start to get a little bit looser with my rules of only draft players on good teams because I think George Pickens has the talent to become a next-tier wide receiver, right? 1,100 receiving yards last year. Now Deontay Johnson's out of the picture. Jalen Warren's dealing with the hamstring injury. I just don't see a world where George Pickens, who's competing with fucking Van Jefferson as a wide receiver too, doesn't see 8 to 10 targets a game, okay? So Pickens, I think, has the upside of being an all-around wide receiver 1. And yeah, this is not going to be a very high-level passing offense. This is not going to be a high-volume passing offense with Russ or Justin Fields. But those guys, when they lock onto their 1, like you saw what Justin Fields did with DJ Moore last year. DJ Moore was the wide receiver 6, and you wouldn't call the Bears offense last year a good passing offense. Russell Wilson, to a lesser degree, look what he did with Courtland Sutton last year. He scored 10 touchdowns. So Pickens is a better version of him at this point. I really like Pickens at the end of the 5th round. T. Higgins, everyone's just kind of forgot about him, but I think he'll be fine for your fantasy team. Moving to round 6, Rashee Rice. But then we have Christian Kirk and Terry McLaurin. Christian Kirk has great chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. He was on pace for a career year before getting hurt last year. You have Calvin Ridley gone. There goes 140 targets. Obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. comes in, Gabe Davis come in, but they need to develop that rapport with Trevor Lawrence before seeing a heavy dosage of targets. So Christian Kirk, I think, is going to have a career year this year. I think he's going to lead the team in target share. I think he's going to lead the team, more importantly, in red zone share. He got a lot of red zone 2 years ago. Then Calvin Ridley kind of took that role last year. Didn't perform very well, but now I think it goes back to Christian Kirk. So I think his touchdown upside is a little bit underrated this year. Terry McLaurin, I've been beating this drum for a little bit now. Jaden Daniels has looked really good this preseason. And if Jaden Daniels is an average quarterback, above average quarterback, then Terry McLaurin is going to have a huge boost in his production and his overall fantasy ceiling. Because over the last 4 years, Terry McLaurin has not ranked inside the top 70 of pure catchable target rate for wide receivers. Not inside the top 70, and despite that, has gone over 1,000 receiving yards in all 4 of those seasons. If Jaden Daniels is even average, Terry McLaurin's ceiling will finally come to fruition here. So we love Rashi, we love Christian Kirk, we love Terry McLaurin. The last player in round 6 is on my must-draft list of players in our draft guide. Our draft guide has our must-draft list. It has our all-fade list. It's got our favorite sleepers, past pick 120. It's got our overvalued and undervalued players, all of our rankings, PPR, half PPR, standard, super flex, one quarterback. It's got a bunch of articles on draft strategy. It's got articles on game-by-game recaps for all the preseason games and everything you need to know for fantasy, all that good shit, all right? That is available at full price on bdge.co right now, but the cheapest and the least expensive way for you to get your hands on it is by simply going to underdogfantasy.com or just downloading the Underdog app. It'll be the first link in the description down below. You just click it, download it, and if you deposit for the first time with code BDGE, $10 or more, you're going to get 3 things. You're going to get a deposit bonus up to actually $1,000 now. They have raised the limits depending on how much you deposit on there. You're going to get a free square of Lamar passing yards, of Lamar Jackson, half a passing yard for week 1. So you get an auto win right there. And then you're going to get draft guide access emailed to you absolutely free. All for just downloading the Underdog Fantasy app and depositing $10 with our code BDGE. Rankings updated, must draft lists updated, sleepers updated, all that good shit. All right. Kyler Murray is one of the quarterbacks on the must draft list. We're 2 years removed from the ACL. When Kyler Murray returned last year, this offense actually moved the ball really, really well, and they were one of the better offenses in the NFL. And now with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, I love either of those stacks. If you grab Marvin in the second or you grab Trey McBride in the 4th, 5th, stacking them with Kyler is printing money this year. We cannot forget that year he had a couple of years ago where he ran for over 800 yards, 11 rushing touchdowns. Kyler Murray is a force to be reckoned with, and he is going to remind people of that this year. You can't get a quarterback with his type of upside in that same draft area. Everybody else is a cone. They're cones with rockets for an arm, but if you're drafting and you're grabbing the quarterback, 7, 8, 9, 10, where Kyler's going, Dak, Jordan Love, those types of guys, great throwers of the football, but they don't have quite the upside that Kyler does because of his legs. So he feels like the easiest upside pick in round 6. Love Kyler here. We move down one more round. We've got Najee Harris, and we've got Jake Ferguson. Now, Najee Harris, I've been over this again. I would not stack Steelers players. I will just say that to you right now. I get this question often. I'm okay stacking players on the same team as long as I'm confident that their offense is going to be and I am not confident about the Steelers. So if you draft Pickens, I would stay away from Najee. However, Najee was on this list prior to the Jaylen Warren hamstring injury news. You guys know I love Najee. They've invested back-to-back picks in first-round offensive linemen. Darnell Washington is getting a lot of run with the first team as an extra blocker on that offensive line. Without Deontay Johnson, this passing offense is going to be run through short dump-offs to their running back. So I think Najee has the ability to see 50, 60-ish targets this year, which will boost him up fantasy rankings really, really quickly. He is their goal line back. He has yet to have an NFL season with fewer than 1,200 yards from scrimmage and 8 touchdowns, okay? And he has not missed a game yet. He has played 17 games in all 3 seasons. So Najee, if you go hero RB, Najee is like the perfect RB2 in fantasy. And I personally love Jake Ferguson. If you look at this Dallas Cowboys offense, you have CeeDee Lamb, who's holding out right now. I don't think he's going to hold out. I think Jerry will eventually come to his senses. But if CeeDee Lamb's on the field, that's fine. Jake Ferguson led all tight ends last year in red zone targets. He had an unlucky touchdown scoring situation. He only scored 5 touchdowns. You know what happens when things regress to the mean? People on fantasy Twitter love to talk about regressing to the mean. Things become regress to the mean, meaning all that touchdown luck he didn't have in the regular season literally all happened in the first playoff game last year. Jake Ferguson scored 3 touchdowns against the Packers in their first playoff game last year. Had that come in the regular season, we're looking at Jake Fergie a little bit differently. But we are looking at Jake Fergie a little bit differently going into this year because we know that shit's coming back in full force. Moving into round 8, and this is a lot of the reason why I go wide receiver early or hero running back is because the value at running back just starts to get phenomenal here. Tony Pollard is one of my favorite picks here. Brian Robinson and Javonte Williams. Those are like my 3 favorite running backs in this round. If you're looking for a wide receiver, I like Rome Odunze, right? I think there's going to be a little bit of a debate between Rome and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Who's that third wide receiver that's going to break out? I would put my money on Rome over JSN. I think he's more talented. I think he's in a better offense. I think he's a better fit with his quarterback. So I'd go Rome there if you're looking for a wide receiver in round 8. But running backs, Tony Pollard, They paid him a lot of money. They're going to use both running backs in the passing game, and I think Tony Pollard will likely be the goal line back. If you look at his numbers last year, he was clearly not 100% healed from the injury that happened the year prior, and towards the second half of the season, Tony Pollard became a good running back again. He was awful for the first half, but then he became good again, and I'm wondering if we get that good Tony Pollard again, that explosive Tony Pollard in a pass-heavy offense in Tennessee that opens up lanes for him and lets him get out in space and like do his thing again. Really like Tony Pollard in round 8. Brian Robinson should be the starter in Washington, get a lot of goal line work, catch a lot of passes as well. You have Cliff Kingsbury with that like horizontal rate offense, which is quick hitters, get the ball out within a second, 2 seconds. That means a lot of running back receptions. And then Javonte Williams, the same thing. Despite all the negative hype out of Broncos camp in the early part of the summer for Javonte, it is completely 180 around. He has looked really good this preseason. Everything out of camp from the beat reporters is clear as day that he is the starting running back. He will get first and second down carries. He will be the goal line back. Jaleel McLaughlin will play as the pass catching back here, but Javonte will catch a ton of passes himself because in Sean Payton's offense, every running back catches a ton of passes. We'll throw this chart on the screen that I also put in yesterday's video. I did a full recap of the entire week 2 preseason slate as it relates to fantasy football. So if you want to just catch up on everything that's been happening this August, that would be the video for you to go watch. But I talked about how over the last 10 years, Sean Payton has not run an offense that is ranked outside of the top 5 in terms of target share to the running back position. Javonte is going to catch a ton of passes, even though he might not be the sole pass catching back, and that is fine, okay? Love Javonte here. In round 9, if you don't get Tony Pollard, my favorite pick is Tajay Spears. I like both of them. I think Tajay, there's a chance that we look back at the end of the year and we say, okay, Tajay's a little bit more talented than Tony Pollard is. I still think they're both going to get a ton of work, especially given the contract that Tony Pollard got with Tennessee. But Tajay, we could see a situation a little bit where it was like Dallas 2 years ago, where Tony Pollard actually becomes Zeke and Tajay Spears, Tony Pollard's Tony Pollard, okay? And we're like, why they keep giving it to this like kind of like slow back Tony Pollard 250 times, but Zeke was still good in fantasy at the end of it. Sure, he didn't return his like second, third round draft capital that you needed to use in fantasy, but in Pollard, you're getting him in the 8th round. Tajay, you're getting him in the 9th round. I like both of those guys. We move into round 10. Speaking of Zeke, I like him a lot. You talk about the opportunity available in Dallas's backfield. It is plentiful. They've got nobody back there. It's him and Rico Dowdle. This is a running back room that has so much opportunity in it. Over the last 3 years, they've averaged an insane amount of touches, carries, targets, goal line opportunities. This was the NFL's highest scoring offense last year, and now their running back room is just completely open. I want pieces of that. I also want pieces of the Cincinnati Bengals backfield, which is completely wide open, which is why Chase Brown and or Zach Moss are my favorite picks in round 10. I think that will be just a split backfield. I don't know how it's going to work itself out. I think Chase Brown has a little bit more upside because he has the explosiveness, but I do think Zach Moss is a better in between the tackles runner. Chase Brown has a little bit of vision issue going on there. He doesn't always see the holes, where I think Zach Moss is a little bit sturdy and can provide that. But this is, again, an offense. If Joe Burrow can stay healthy, he will make sure that running backs in this backfield produce at a high level for fantasy football. And the last player on this entire list, I have just yapped for like 30 minutes straight without taking a fucking breath. So if you respect me at all, which I understand if you don't, if you respect me at all, please hit the button that looks like this. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We will be doing this same exact video tomorrow, but my least favorite picks in every single round through round 10. The last player on this list is Jerome Ford, and I cannot implore you more. Please, if I know you guys don't trust me when I talk about Nick Chubb's injury, go listen to Establish the Run's latest podcast where they brought on, listen to like any fucking doctor or injury person talk about Nick Chubb's injury and how it will relate to fantasy football, and then maybe you will finally believe me. But go listen to ETR's latest podcast where they brought on Stefania Bell, who is the injury analysis doctor from ESPN. It's not good for Nick Chubb. I don't care how passionate you think he is or how good at football he was 5 years ago. This is Jerome Ford's backfield. This is completely Jerome Ford's backfield. They lost like half of their offensive line last year. They will be back healthy. This will be a better run blocking line, okay? I'm in on Jerome Ford in round 10. He was like a top 18, top 15 running back last year. Despite splitting carries heavily and not going into the year as a starter, things are different this year, all right? It is Jerome Ford's backfield. I want all of him. Pause. But I want all of you to head over to Underdog Fantasy, download the app. We will be doing a ton of season-long pick'ems. We will be doing pick'ems throughout the actual season. If you want to track all the bets I take, you can do so on the Pick'It app, also linked down below. But Underdog Fantasy will get you the draft guide. Deposit $10 with our code BDGE, and that will be emailed to you instantaneously. Okay? That's it. I love you. I need to catch my breath.